With a million podcasts out there, we're grateful you chose our listed titles. We give fantasy football advice to get your crap team to the finals. From Nate's cousin Eddie Persona, and his unapologetic love for Chubb, and Justin's hatred for Chris Ballard, our show is as good as a belly rub. Mark is the best of the NFC West, putting down Penguin Pete with his love for the Rams. Grab a whiskey or a beer, we're glad you're here. Welcome to the family, but plan for gibberish and rambling. We have recent news and games of the week. We talk PPR and weekly streams. Start 'em and sit 'em, keep 'em or quit 'em. Hit the like and sub buttons for the fellas. Got any suggestions? Just tell us. With a million podcasts out there, we're grateful you chose toilets to titles. We give fantasy football advice to get your crap team to the finals. From Nate's cousin.
And thank you very much to Pentatonics for that that lovely little intro song. I'm pretty sure you could probably guess that one, Mark.
Yeah, I was right there.
Yeah,
Wasn't my favorite.
Yeah, a little bit of a cappella there from our friends at Pentatonics. And obviously, I'm joking. We don't know them, and they certainly don't know us. But that is a group that I love to listen to around Christmas time. Not gonna lie, I annoy my students with some Pentatonics around the holidays. But Mark, week 12 is upon us. How did week 11 treat you, sir?
Week 11 treated me pretty well. The Rams won. We're back on track. And fantasy-wise, I had a pretty good week overall throughout the massive amount of leagues I'm in.
Yeah, I had I think in my 11 lineup setting leagues, I had 8 wins, and the Colts pulled off a victory, and Anthony Richardson actually looked good. So yeah, I too also had a wonderful weekend. So I hope that Richardson can continue to prove me wrong. So it's just 1 week. I'm not going to hold my breath on it or anything, but definitely happy to see the improvement there. But yeah, so Nate is not with us, as you guys can see. Nate is taking a break tonight. He's been up for like the last 36 hours straight for his work, so he said he needed to get some sleep tonight so he can get up early and go back and do it again. So thanks for what you do for your community there, Nate. But luckily he filled out the important stuff on the show notes. We'll be able to fill you in on all of that. I want to announce, guys, that we are now on Blue Sky. So Blue Sky is a social media app that's certainly not unlike Twitter, but kind of think 2011 Twitter. Like if you think about what it was like back then, before all the bots and before the First Lady elect Elon Musk came in and took over Twitter and kind of did all the crap that he did with it, all the things that we don't like about it anymore. It's kind of like that. So definitely a much more friendly space as well. There's not nearly as much arguing or negativity over there. So on second thought, maybe you're not ready for that, Mark. But if you guys are on Blue Sky, go check us out at Toilets to Titles. I said on the show Sunday morning that anybody new that follows us over there on Blue Sky this week, and I'm going to continue that with this show as well, all the way up until Sunday morning at the Start Sit show. Up to that point, anybody that follows us over on Blue Sky this week will be entered for a chance for a wheel spin for a free entry into next year's Frankenstein League. And we'll probably do that wheel spin right here on the main show next Tuesday. So just a thought, throwing that out there. So if you're on Blue Sky, go check us out. But yeah, Mark, week 12, we've got a lot of teams on bye. I think last time that this happened, you called it the bipocalypse. I know that's pretty normal language out there for a lot of shows, but it did catch me by surprise when you said it for some reason, and I like it, so we're going to roll with it. Let's see those bye weeks. I think I'm a little bit ahead of myself here, but when I was looking at the bye weeks, there's a lot of fantasy football players involved with this week with the Falcons, the Bills, the Bengals, the Jaguars, the Saints, and the Jets. But don't fret, Mark. Just because you have a lot of players on bye this week, don't fret. Because everybody has a lot of players on bye this week. Your opponent probably does too.
Well, I definitely fretted because when I was filling out the show notes earlier, and I was trying to do who we were going to sit. Every time I went to go sit a person, that person was on bye, so I couldn't sit them.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. I think I even mentioned that a couple of times in my stardom and sit 'em.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I jumped ahead on the notes here a little bit, but um, the injury update. We got Brock Purdy. He had some shoulder surgery, not surgery, shoulder soreness in his throwing shoulder. There is some concern about a possible AC joint, but that's not something that I read that came from the team or anything. It's just kind of like whispers around the community. So definitely something to consider and look into. The 49ers do have a serviceable backup quarterback, though, if I remember correctly. Do you remember who their backup quarterback is?
Who is their backup quarterback? No, I don't.
Looking at oh yeah, Josh Dobbs. That's who it was. They were able to snag
yeah.
Joshua Dobbs this offseason, so he is the backup quarterback there. So that could be fun. That could be interesting. Obviously,
as the Rams fan, yeah, that'd be really fun for me to watch.
Obviously, 49ers fans don't want to see it, but those of us that love Josh Dobbs would love to see him get another opportunity. But we hate to see it happen by injury. Raheem Mostert, he had a mild hip injury. He did come back into that game in week 11, but he was very ineffective. And I'm not really planning on doing the keep him or quit him segment anymore, because that's usually kind of based around like potential trade talks and everything. And this is primarily a redraft show. We're past the trade deadline for most of you. So, but if we did have a keep him or quit him, I guess Mostert at this point, is he a keep on your bench or cut him for you, Mark?
Yeah, I mean, that's tough. I didn't watch. I'm going to be honest. I didn't watch much of that game at all. So I don't know when he got hurt. Did he get hurt early in the game or later?
Not really. It was like second quarter, and then he came back, third quarter. I mean, or
so
maybe it was early third and he came back in the fourth. I don't
it's early
remember.
third. We're coming off of 2 weeks where the week before against the Rams, he got 0 carries. In this game, through 2.5 quarters, 2 quarters maybe, he only got 3 carries. That's not looking good. Yeah, I don't know how you can plug him in your lineup at this point.
Yeah, because even when he came back into the game, I don't think he even got a carry after he came back. So it's bad, man. It's ugly. And at this point, I'm kind of feeling like I'm only because I have a lot of shares of Achane and I have a lot of shares of Mostert. I feel like at this point, I'm only going to keep Mostert in the leagues where I have Achane if I have the roster space for him. And then that's just an insurance, a handcuff. And honestly, I'm not so sure it's not going to be Jalen Wright if Achane goes down at this point. Like Mostert, it's bound to happen. Eventually, you're going to hit a wall, right? And he hasn't done anything all season, even when he was getting more opportunities. So, yeah, it's just ugly. He's been helping so many fantasy teams for so long,
So I will say I do have him in a league or two, and in those leagues I'm not cutting them just because it's in leagues where I need running backs, and the running back options right now are so slim to none out there that it's almost like I'm not playing him, but he's on my bench just hoping something changes in the future.
Yeah, I mean, get Jalen Wright.
Yeah, I mean he's long. He's long. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's a possibility that he's long gone. I know in my 12-team leagues, he's available. Like right now, I'm looking at an ESPN site, and he's available, and he's only rostered in 5.3% of leagues in that one. So, yeah, I know you play in some deeper leagues, and you play with more professional level guys. So, but these novice leagues, like a lot of you guys that are watching are in a lot of novice leagues, he's probably going to be available in a lot of your leagues. So he might be somebody worth picking up. But and then again, that we're talking handcuffs. We're talking handcuffs. Like you're not going to start Jalen Wright, so don't let him use up a roster spot. But if you're in a deeper league, you have those desperate deeper needs for running back, and you're kind of just waiting for that next injury to happen. He could definitely be fantasy viable, especially with the stretch that they have down the road during your fantasy playoffs. But we also have injuries to Zamir White and Alexander Madison. Madison's is an ankle sprain. Zamir White's is possibly a quad strain. We don't know if either of them are going to play. We don't know if both of them are going to play. It might be one or the other, but definitely something worth monitoring. And then also, if for whatever reason neither play, you want to go out and pick up Amir Abdullah this week. Amir Abdullah would be the next man up. Last week, he had 10.7 PPR fantasy points for you. He had that was on 3 catches pretty much because he only had 1 carry for 1 yard, but he had a touchdown on 3 catches for 16 yards. He'll definitely be the third down back should Madison not be able to go. He'll most likely get most of the brunt of the carries between the 20s if Zamir White can't go. But if White can't go and Madison does, you're starting him. If Madison can't go and White does, you're starting him. But like I said, keep an eye on the situation. And if they're both out, Abdullah could be potentially a good bye week filler with all these guys that are on bye this week, just from opportunity alone.
If they both are out, do you think we finally get to see a little bit of Lob or Labe, however he's?
I would like to think so. I mean, I feel like he would at least get opportunity. He would at least get to play. I'm not sure that he's going to get to play too much over Abdullah. I mean, Labe's actually been a healthy scratch for half of the season, even after he was healthy and back. So they just don't have the depth there. But if they're both out, I'm sure he would make the active roster. He would get some run, but I don't know. I don't know that we're going to see it this year, man. There's just too much depth there. But hopefully he can show them and impress them enough in practice that they don't try to keep all these running backs for next season. Because I'm with you, man. I'm on that train. Tyjae Spears and Jake Ferguson both with concussions. So keep an eye on those. There's always a decent chance with non-quarterbacks that those concussions linger for an extra week these days. It seems like that happens a lot. So if Tyjae Spears can't go, you've got Pollard. If Ferguson can't go, then it doesn't matter. He plays for the Cowboys, and we've all given up on them anyway.
McCarthy's already commented on Ferguson that he's going to be very hard-pressed to be able to play this week.
Yeah.
With it being on Monday.
Jerry, what's up, buddy? Thanks for tuning in, Jerry. Let's see. I believe we talked on Sunday that we were rooting for Jerry to win his Frank matchup. So I don't remember if you did or not, Jerry, but we were pulling for you Sunday morning. I don't know if you caught that when you chimed in. See other news. Jets GM Joe Douglas was fired after more than 5 seasons. That's about 6 seasons too long. But Joe Douglas is out the door. New GM coming in. What do you think? Do you think they can talk Joe Namath into coming in? They wouldn't have to change very much on the nameplate.
Well, what I'm wondering is, do you think Aaron Rodgers can talk Woody Johnson into firing himself? That way he could be the quarterback, the head coach, the GM, and now the owner of the Jets too. I mean, I think that's where we're at, right?
Yeah, I think it's possible. I mean, Tom Brady was only able to buy out 5% of a crappy team. So, but this is the Jets, so he might be able to squeeze out 10% anyway.
Yeah.
Let's see. Hit that like and subscribe button, guys. We appreciate you tuning in. That's it for our injury update. That's it for our recent news. We're going to jump right into our games of the week. The game of the week is kind of a fun little game that we play. Game of the week means it could mean these are games that we're looking forward to. It could mean they're games that we think are going to be close, but it's a game within a game. And that game is that each week we get points based off of how we finished the previous week. Like, for instance, I chose the Chiefs at the Bills last week as my game of the week. That was a 9-point difference. So I got 9 more points. This is like golf. You want the lower score. So again, game of the week, Chiefs and Bills. I got 9 points. And I am still considerably far behind on the season total. I have 163 total points. because I had some early season bombs. And then from there, I've just really actually been choosing the game that I think is the game of the week that I want to watch the most, because I don't care anymore about winning the game. So this week I'm going with the Ravens at the Chargers. Monday Night Football. We got the Harbaugh Bowl. I practiced that like 47 times earlier. I thought for sure I was going to nail it, but the Harbaugh Bowl. They're playing. The Chargers get a home game. The Ravens are coming in to see all their former Ravens players that are playing for the Chargers. It should be a fun game to watch on Monday Night Football. That storyline, I'm sure, is going to get played out. I don't know if this is one that the Mannings are going to get for the Manning cast on Monday Night Football, but if they do, you're going to have brothers talking about brothers, so I'm sure that'll get played out pretty deeply. And then, of course, if they have Bill freaking Belichick back on there again, I'm not going to be able to watch because I refuse to tune in when he's on. Jerry says, I believe the combination of Genesis hero card and me sitting Anthony Richardson killed me. Gotcha. Yeah, Richardson was kind of a surprise, especially against that Jets defense, man. Like I said, he actually looked good, so kind of excited about that. Mark, what was your game of the week last week and this week?
So my game of the week last week was Bengals at Chargers, a 7-point difference. I'm right in the middle of the pack as far as the standings, but I'm a significant way behind Nate, who's I think is averaging 1 to 2 points every single week.
Yeah.
This game of the week, I'm going with a game that's interesting to me and maybe only me as a Rams fan, but Seattle and Arizona. Need Seattle to win this game, even up the standings in the NFC West.
No, this is definitely more than just interesting to you, because I have some pretty heavy fantasy importance going on in that game. And then also for some of the segments we have coming up, I had looked pretty deeply into that game and almost chose a lot of players from that matchup. So I think it's going to be a fun one to watch. Ultimately, I think the reason I avoided it for some of the matchups is just because it's a divisional game, and with those two teams in particular, you never know how it's going to play out. But Nate went with the Ravens and Steelers last week. Of course, that was a close game. It came down to like the 18th field goal. I'm pretty sure Boswell is still kicking field goals in that game right now as we speak. But the Steelers won that game by 2. And so it was only just a 2-point game. Nate still has the lead at 84. You're at 111. So still, yeah, you're a decent distance behind him, but then I am way behind you even at 163. So Nate went with the Eagles and the Rams this week.
Let's go.
So you have the Rams, obviously. I mean, you're a Rams fan, I guess is what I meant to say. So, and they're facing the Eagles. Do you think this is going to be a close game?
I do, because as I'll just get into it right now. My upset of the week is the Rams over the Eagles, and I think it's going to be a close game because we're going to give up points as well. So if we're going to win, it is going to be a close game. There's no way I see us blowing out the Eagles. I'm not that delusional, but I do realistically think we have a good shot at winning this game. I liked what I see. They switched their offensive line around again last week, and there were 0 sacks last week against the Patriots, which I don't care who we're playing. 0 sacks against anybody for what our offensive line has been is a huge improvement. And if they're going to keep Stafford upright, I think our offense can compete with anybody. And the thing I love about our defense is we're not the greatest defense, as we always talk about in fantasy. You want to start players against them, but our defense is opportunistic. Like, we cause a lot of turnovers, and it seems to come in crucial points in the game too. So that's what keeps us alive and keeps us in games.
So, you know what else they're going to have to do? The Rams are going to have to do to win this game. They're going to have to get that running game going back again. Like,
Yeah.
not that it's been horrible. Don't get me wrong. The last 3 weeks have not actually been bad. It's just been kind of not real good by Kyron Williams standards, the standard that he set for himself early in the season. And I know a lot of that has to do with Puka and Cup being back, but from your vantage point as a fan, I mean, they're winning games. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, do you think that he's going to continue to just do enough, and that's what they need, and that's all they care about? Like, do you think that 15 to 18 carry range and that 60 to 70-yard range is going to be enough to beat the Eagles?
I think it's going to be matchup based. I think the run game is going to have to work against the Eagles, but then again, like the Eagles secondary is nothing outstanding either. So I mean, it's going to depend on how the game flow goes. If we can get up early, and that's one of our biggest things. Like both us and the Eagles are slow starting teams. So I think what we need to do is go put pressure on them early and score early, and then we can get the run game flowing. But
McVay definitely knows how to coach from with the lead for sure.
mhm,
Um, my upset of the week is going to be I was kind of surprised at first to see that the 49ers were actually dogs by 2.5 points, but then I saw their opponent, and the Packers have actually been playing really good football all season. With or without Love, they've been playing good football. And and the game is at Green Bay. They say the home team gets 3 points. So if that were actually the case, it should be like a half-point game. Um, depending on how badly the refs screw it up at the end of the game, but I'm going to go with that as my upset game of the week. I think the Niners can go into Green Bay another week with a full healthy offensive roster, minus Ayuk, of course. But and who knows what's going to happen with Kittle? But for the most part, I think it's going to be another game where CMC could potentially start to bounce back even stronger and have a great game. Nate went with the Chargers +3 against the Ravens. Um, Another surprising team, and Harbaugh there for the Chargers. He's doing a great job of kind of taking what the defense gives him, adjusting his coaching style to what he has on the field. I got to commend him for that, because most coaches will really stay firm in their belief system and their system, and they want their quarterback to play to their system. There's very, very few coaches that will change their offensive mindset, their offensive schemes, or their defensive mindset and their defensive schemes based on what they have on the field. The ones that do are usually the best coaches in the league. So I'm pretty impressed with that myself. I'm glad to see that they're getting away more from the run, as the run started to become a little bit ineffective after about week 5, 6 or so, halfway through the midpoint of the fantasy season. Their run started to become more ineffective. They started throwing the ball more. Now they're moving the ball through the air, and it's like, you know what, this Herbert kid, he's got an arm. Like, let's use it. And it's like it dawned on them. They're throwing the ball a lot more, and I love what I'm seeing there for the Chargers. So kudos to them. So I absolutely don't hate this potential upset of +3 against the Ravens, because both teams have um, uh, a good team here. So this could be, certainly probably is a potential playoff matchup as well. So also probably should have been a game of the week. So it was a game of the week. I chose it as the game of the week. No wonder I'm talking so highly of it. I'm excited about that game, if you can't tell.
no, I'm excited about that game too. I mean, not only do you have the Brother Bowl, you also have Greg Roman flipping sides of the ball. Now he's with the Chargers instead of the Ravens. And just to touch on the Harbaugh thing, like, yes, I'm not going to say Harbaugh's not a run first coach, but we do forget that he did coach Andrew Luck at Stanford. So, I mean, he knows how to use a very talented quarterback like Herbert. While he was at Michigan, we've always had one of the best offensive lines in college football. You'd be stupid not to run the ball behind that. But yeah, with Herbert's been phenomenal. And I think we're only going to see more because the matchups through the rest of the season get even better.
Yeah, but the coach has a lot more say so in who he has on the field in college. So he
Yeah.
he built that offensive line
Oh,
because he wanted
100%.
to run the
Yeah,
football. So
100%.
he definitely has that at heart. But
But it's also much easier to go recruit offensive linemen than it is to recruit a 5-star quarterback.
that's true. Very true. All right. Patreon.com/toy listed titles, guys. And that's a place that you can go to interact with us. You can interact with us on Patreon. I believe I'm the only admin that interacts with people on the Patreon itself. But once you get in there, we can also get you in on our Discord chat where all of our team can interact with you anytime that you want to type in any question. You will be in the Patreon exclusive chat as well, where you can kind of help drive some of the content that we're putting out. And speaking of Patreons, Jerry's back up. He says, my upset of the week is Bears to beat the Vikings. Imagine that. Jerry's choosing the Bears to beat the Vikings. The Vikings defense is still pretty solid, and the Bears offense is not so much. So that one kind of worries me on that end. But on the flip side of it, though, I think that Bears defense, I mean, with Sam Darnold taking kind of a slump here lately, they might be able to get enough heat to him to make something happen. I think that could be a close game. Definitely closer than what the books are telling us right now. They have the Bears as 3.5-point dogs, actually. So that's closer than I would have thought. They got the Bears at 3.5, getting 3.5 points against the Vikings.
I'm going to slam the Vikings.
Not
I
even close.
have no faith in their offense, and like they're going to destroy Caleb Williams.
Well, I will say this much. Just like he said here, they almost beat the Pack last week, and it is a divisional game. And that NFC North divisional games, you just never know what's going to happen, man. That might be why Vegas has it close, but I also don't blame you for smashing the Vikings either. So either way, that's I think it could be a really good game, personally. Start them and sit them. This is where we take a quarterback that's in the top 12 that we think is not going to be a top 12 quarterback. So we're going to sit him in one quarterback leagues and go stream something better. Or a running back that's in the top, a RB1 or RB2 currently position, top 24. Same with wide receiver, and we think that maybe they're not going to do so well. So we're putting them down in our flex position, maybe even benching them depending on who and what the matchup is. And then top 12 tight end, same thing. Or we're going to start somebody that's outside of that QB1 QB1 tight end 1, RB 1 or 2, wide receiver 1 or 2 that we think is going to have a big enough game that they should be in your starting lineup. So I'll kick that off with Pat Mahomes. Pat Mahomes is currently the QB 15. He's been hovering right around that range for quite some time now. And so we've been able, between the three of us, I think he's been used almost every week as a guy that's just outside there, depending on matchup that we could use. And I think this week he's going to feast on the sixth worst pass defense in the league, and that is the Panthers. So I think this is a game where they might be able to go up kind of early, and then you'd think that they would lean on Hunt a little bit. But since, it is the Chiefs and they do want to try to at least put some stats out there when they can, and they've had some closer games, they're going to be bouncing back from a tough Bills loss. Like, Andy Reid's going to want to build that confidence. They might still continue to throw the football. So I like Pat Mahomes this week. Jared Goff is my sit this week. He is the QB8. He faces the Colts this week, my Colts, and I think with 3 of the top 12 quarterbacks on bye this week and the rest of the top 12 having really good matchups, it was really tough to decide who to bench. So that's part of the reason why I chose Goff. The other part is because if I have to put some kind of logic on it, I feel like this week they went up really big on the Jaguars, and then they still continued to throw the football like crazy, and they really let their wide receivers and Goff eat. And then they even Brock Wright got in on it since Laporta was out, and he got a touchdown late too, so which really bailed me out on my streaming advice last week. So appreciate that, Brock. But I think this week they kind of do the opposite. They go up early enough and they decide to just let their running backs eat. So just to give them some stats as well. So that's kind of where I was leaning with that. But also, if they're going to go up early, I mean, let's face it, if they go up early, it's going to be because Jared Goff hit a couple of touchdowns as well. You're not benching Jared Goff. I'm just trying to come up with something here. If I had to pick somebody in the top 12, that was my logic and reasoning there. Kareem Hunt is my start running back. He is outside the top 24. He's currently the RB 30. He gets to face the worst run defense in the league against running backs. And before he hit that buzzsaw of the Bills last week in week 11, he was actually doing really well. Hunt had double digits PPR points in every game with every game with the Chiefs, and 4 of those first 5 games with them, he was an RB1. So he's tearing it up, and he's going against, like I said, the Panthers. So it should be a really good game for him. You definitely need to start him. My sit is DeAndre Swift. I had a very tough decision to make because I won in Frank this week, and I had to choose who to give up because I had to start my full lineup to make sure I won. So I was giving up a good player no matter what, and I gave up DeAndre Swift to get Devon Achane. And that's just because from here on out, the schedule difference is a massive difference. Achane has a really, really running back friendly schedule coming up, and Swift not so much. Also, Swift this week in particular, he draws a tough matchup. He's going to be going up against the second best defense against running backs, and that's the Vikings. But also that first game with new offensive coordinator Thomas Brown, Swift's snap shares were cut nearly in half, and it looked a lot more like a committee than it has all season. I think there's a really good opportunity for Roschon Johnson to step up. He stepped up in a big way this past week. So I think that they're looking for other options, not necessarily because they don't like Swift, but maybe this offensive coordinator realizes that Swift is not an every down back. He's not built like an every down back. He's not a between the tackles back. He's not a between the 20s back. You have to pick and choose where you use Swift to really get the best efficiency out of him. And I think maybe this offensive coordinator realizes that, which also kind of feeds into why I agree with our man Jerry on this game being potentially close. Will the return of Pacheco hurt Hunt? Yes, I think it will. But also Hunt is also going to be. I don't think it'll hurt immediately. It's going to take some time. But I do think that Pacheco starts to bounce back before or right at your fantasy playoffs, which is also really tough schedule time for Hunt as well. We advised this about a week or two ago, actually even 3 weeks ago. We were saying before your trade deadline, try to get rid of Hunt, try to cut Hunt in a trade in some possible way to avoid this very scenario. But unfortunately, if you weren't able to do that, or if you just needed Hunt because he had a couple of good matchups there that might have helped get you into the playoffs, then you have to deal with that now. So, but I do think that Pacheco comes back and he cuts into Hunt, and I think it's going to be a pretty good two-headed monster if he does. And with Andy Reid, he wants to save his players as much as he can for the playoffs because he doesn't care about winning regular season games. He cares about winning playoff games. So I could definitely see there being an even split there, so that they're both pretty well rested going into the playoffs for sure. So. What do you think?
I was going to ask the same question before Jerry did. So with you starting Hunt, do you think Pacheco's not playing this week, or because it sounds like he is playing this week? Do you think there's just enough work to go around, or he's going to be very limited in his first game back?
Yeah, I think they're going to ease him back into it. I think this is a good game to ease him back into it. He'll get a lot of that garbage time stuff. So,
and I personally think this week, especially, I think there's enough work to go around with Carolina for them both to be viable.
Yeah, no, I agree. But also after this week, you have you've got the Raiders, and then it starts to get tough. You got the Chargers, you got the Browns. Houston's defense is no slouch. Then you've got the Steelers in what is most fantasy football championship games. My thought process here is that Pacheco is going to start he's going to come in. He's going to kind of spell hunt a little bit. He'll get some garbage time stuff to kind of shake off the rust. Next week, he's going to get a 50-50 load, or maybe at least, a 35-65 load or something like that, so that they can really try to see where he's at and see how they can utilize him. And then starting that Chargers game in week 14, that's when you need to start to worry, because they're going to know how to utilize both of them moving forward after that. And they will both play a lot. That's just kind of so much of fantasy football is trying to guess at what you think is best. And I think it's what's going to happen.
100%. But there is a big camp of people out there that think Pacheco is just going to come back and get the majority of the work this week, which I don't see happening personally. I think it's going to be more like you said. I could see it possibly being a 50-50 split the first week. But like I said, even if it is, I think there's enough work. But I think it's probably a little more 75 to 25% this week, with Hunt leading the shares.
Yeah, this one right here is a tough question, and it's tough enough that I want you to go first. If you have Laporta, Otten, by the way, good evening, Bobby. Thanks for tuning in. Appreciate you. Bobby likes ham over bacon, just so you're aware. But anyway, Laporta, Otten, and Disley. Who are you going to drop? Trade deadlines pass, so that's not an option.
I mean, if you have to drop one, it's Disley. Because, I mean, Otten's good enough to play until Laporta's completely healthy. And you can even wait until you see Laporta start playing well again.
No.
I don't know. Are you different?
I'm not different.
Disley's been great, but I can't put him over Otten.
Yeah, I can't say I'm different, but here's the thing. Like, you're going to hear me talk highly about Disley here in a little bit in another segment, Bobby, but even with all of the good things I'm going to say about Disley, with all of his target share and his opportunity and how much more they're passing the ball, he's still getting over that course of that time. He's only had 2 games since the bye week. So starting week 6 on, he's only had 2 games where he's been in double digits in PPR leagues. So like it was 16.1 and it was 18. So that's wonderful. Don't get me wrong. But even Laporta has done better than that and over the same period of time. So, and Laporta's having a crap season by his standards. So, yeah, I think I'm going to have to go. I'm going to have to agree with you and go with Disley on that one. Because they're going to play the matchups, and if there's an opportunity for them to get the run game going back, they're going to with the Chargers. Like, I mean, every team's going to try to play the matchups, I guess, but in Detroit specifically, they're built to be more of a pass happy offense from time to time, even though they have a really good run game. But that's why their run game is so effective. They're one of the few teams that heavily rely on the pass to help open up that run game with that 2-headed monster, and that's why they're both efficient. They both have a particular set of skills, and then people start to target that run, and the pass is wide open. So, yeah, I'm going to agree with you and go with Disley there. Hey, look at that, Stephen Drakes. Appreciate you, buddy. Appreciate you very much. As a matter of fact, you get the royal flush here if I can find it. All right. We appreciate you, Stephen. Thanks for that donation. All donations go towards our Canton Fund and the Frankenstank Listener League to help pay for the website or the My Fantasy League for the Frankenstank Listener League next season, so that we can try to help keep the payouts higher for that one, since a third of it goes to a charity. So we appreciate you very much for that, Stephen. But he says, do we feel like Hubbard's value will drop a lot? Also, would you drop forward or okay? So that's a different question. No, I'm not going to say it's going to drop a lot. I do think that it's going to drop a decent amount. His opportunity share is going to drop. He's probably going to lose about 20% of his touches early on. Now, as it gets deeper into the season, maybe it gets closer to 50-50. They're not going to have a shot at the playoffs. They're going to want to see what they have in Brooks. So maybe it could drop closer to 50-50 a little bit later, but they just paid Hubbard. They paid him good on an extension, and they didn't pay him to be a backup. So my guess is it's not going to drop a whole heck of a lot. I would still be perfectly fine and feel safe starting Hubbard even throughout the playoffs, when and where I can. What do you think, Mark?
So will it drop a lot? No, I don't think it'll drop a lot, but it's going to drop. And it's going to be significant enough that it's going to sting, because what you're used to has been phenomenal from Hubbard.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not going to get that anymore, because
Right.
Brooks is going to cut into his work, and they're going to want to see what they have in Brooks. So it's not like they're just going to throw him out there for 1 or 2 carries a game. He's going to get a good chunk, but I still think Hubbard's going to get a lot of use. I was going to actually talk about this later on in one of our segments, or actually the segment we're in right now. I just haven't got to mine yet. But, the way I'm playing it with Hubbard is, if it's not a good matchup against the run, like if they're playing a tough run defense,
Yeah.
I'm not playing Hubbard, because I think the good run defense on top of him splitting carries with Brooks are enough to stay away.
So that's what I was going to say. This week they play the Chiefs, and the Chiefs are the best team in the league against the run. And he's going to be losing a little bit of carries to Brooks this week, in theory. So this is going to be a tough week. I hope you have a plan B. He's probably going to be a flex guy at best this week, just because of the matchup more than Brooks. After that, though, we've got Tampa Bay, who that's a very running back friendly offense. I could see both of them potentially doing decent in that week. I'm still starting Hubbard in week 13 as of right now, unless Brooks just knocks my socks off in week 12. I'm not going to worry about Brooks at all for week 13 against Tampa Bay, even though I think he could potentially do something. And then week 14 is another tough matchup, the 4th best team against running backs in Philadelphia. And that's probably the first week of your playoffs, your fantasy playoffs. So that's kind of scary. That is something I would be concerned about. But just like Mark said, I'm more concerned about the matchup there with the little bit of loss with Brooks than I am just the loss of the opportunity with Brooks. After that, you got Dallas and Arizona, a couple nicer. So if you get through that week 1 and playoff matchup, that round 1 playoff matchup in week 14, you should still be sitting pretty with Hubbard, not too concerned about Brooks. And he says also, would you drop Ford or Benson?
Ford for Benson.
Oh, drop Ford for Benson. Okay. Well, what do you think, NFC West?
So my answer is yes, but not for the reason I think you're thinking. So Benson's got a lot of work the last 2 weeks before their bye, but that's because they've been blowouts. He's not going to get 10 plus carries in close games. So don't expect that. But the reason I'm dropping Ford for Benson is because if something happens to Connor, Benson stock shoots to the roof. Ford is doing nothing. Cleveland can't seem to run the ball, and they have Chubb there too. So, I mean, Ford's not giving you anything right now anyway, so I would take the risk on stashing Benson just in case something were to happen for the upside, because I don't see much upside with Ford regardless.
Okay, so Chubb came back in week 7. Ford in the first 6 games, he was already starting to kind of peter out before Chubb even got. That was a horrible play on words in that specific spot. That was not intended, I promise. But so Ford in week 1 had 18.9 PPR fantasy points against Dallas, and we have now since found out that Dallas is just really bad at stopping the run. Against Jacksonville, he only had 7.4. In hindsight, maybe should have been a little bit more, but I don't remember that far back to know the specifics. I didn't research for this specific question that just came in, but against the Giants, he had 10. The Raiders, he had 15.5. Those are to be expected. And then Washington, who's actually a decent defense, he got 7.9, and then Philly 1.4. And then he's been pretty well non-existent. I think the point here is if Chubb goes down, then Ford could potentially maybe be a low end RB2 or a flex position guy for you. But if Connor goes down, Benson is a startable asset. So I agree with you completely. I would drop Ford for Benson, yes. And then last says I have McBride. Should I hold or try and trade? Now, if you who's your other tight ends? For one, if you don't have any other tight end, there's nothing wrong with McBride. I get he hasn't scored touchdowns. He had a rushing touchdown and he had a fumble recovery touchdown, and that fumble recovery touchdown wasn't something that counted towards your fantasy points. But he hasn't had a receiving touchdown all season. They came off of their bye week. The regression is there, but even without those touchdowns, he's had nothing but double digits fantasy points for you from week 5 on. So I think it's crazy to drop him. In most formats, he's still a top 5 fantasy tight end. I'm not dropping him by any means, but I think
he was saying trade, not drop.
Yeah, but
they're trying trade.
Yeah, no, I meant trade, but I'm really not looking to try to trade him at all. But it also depends on who your other tight ends are. And he says, sorry, I meant hold or trade Jonnu Smith since I have McBride. Okay. That one I might try. Jonnu Smith is somebody that you could probably trade high right now because he's on a high right now because of 28.1 fantasy points. And then before that, you could also make the argument to the other owner. You know, he's had 7 targets, 6 targets, 6 targets, 4 targets, 8 targets, all since the bye week. So, like, he's being heavily utilized. I mean, if you don't want to carry 2 tight ends, then yeah, sure, I would definitely trade him because I feel like the regression for touchdowns is going to come back to McBride, and he's going to suddenly skyrocket and be great for you. I don't necessarily think that Jonnu is always going to be the guy there. It depends on matchup for him, but McBride is pretty matchup proof. He's going to get double digits no matter what. So, yeah, that's my advice. You got anything different?
No, I'm definitely trading Jonnu. I mean, like you were going on before we knew the actual question, there's nothing wrong with McBride at all. If you take out those last 2 weeks, which we just talked about were blowouts, and you were seeing Benson get 10 carries a week. Outside of those weeks, he had 9 targets, 6 targets, 6 targets, 9 targets, 8 targets, 11 targets. That's exactly what you want to see in a putrid tight end position this season. Like, you have a strong advantage over half the field in your league by having a guy like McBride. So, yeah, definitely get what you can out of Jonnu because, I mean, even if you have multiple flex, we typically don't want to be starting 2 tight ends on a weekly basis.
All right. I'm assuming this is Jaden Reed. He says, hi, should I hold Jaden or try and send Jaden? Oh, wait, Jaden and a wide receiver. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's Jaden Daniels.
Yeah.
If it's Jaden Daniels, then he's want to know, should I hold Jaden Daniels or try to send Jaden and a wide receiver for Lamar? And if he does that, he's got Pickens, Neighbors, and JJ. So are you choosing one of those 3 wide receivers to tie with Jaden to get Lamar?
Or are you sending a weaker receiver? If you're sending one of those, I would say no.
Yeah, I don't think so. And especially if this is just a 1 quarterback league, because quarterbacks aren't quite as valuable in a 1 quarterback league. I think because I know Jaden's had a little bit of a slip here lately. But
and, you know, I was going to talk about that. I don't think he's healthy.
Yeah.
I think ever since he came back from injury, I have a friend who's a big Commanders fan, and I was talking about the game last week, and he said if you watch, there were plenty of plays last week, and I went back and watched it where McLaurin was wide open.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't even attempt to make the throw. It's
right.
like he doesn't want to throw it downfield. So I don't know. I don't know if something's going on there. So I mean, I would look at moving him if I could. I don't want to give up Pickens, Neighbors, or JJ.
Right, and listen to Lamar's schedule, and I don't get me wrong, Lamar is phenomenal. I've got Lamar in most of my leagues that are doing extremely well because of Lamar. But listen to the schedule. He's got the Chargers this week, which is a pretty tough matchup. Then he's got Philly. And, I mean, that's not going to be easy. Then he's got a bye week, most likely, or very possibly, either the last game of your regular season where you're trying to get into the playoffs, or the first round of your playoffs, depending on how deep your playoffs are. Then you got the Giants. Okay, that's a good one. And then Pittsburgh. So, like, he's got a tough schedule and a bye week coming up. Like, I don't want to give up too much for him, especially if it's a one quarterback league. So, sorry, Arturo. I think I'm going to hold Jaden here because, oh yeah, I guess I probably should read off the second half of that argument there, especially if Daniels is still kind of playing hurt because he too has a bye week in week 14, but he has Dallas this week, so that could potentially be a get right game for him. The way that Dallas has been playing this season, Tennessee's going to be a tough one, but then he's got New Orleans after the bye week. Also, again, Philadelphia. So I guess it's kind of a pretty similar schedule there, but I definitely like the lows better than for Daniels than I do Lamar. But if Daniels has been playing hurt and he's going to get it right and get back, yeah, those wide receivers are just too good. Rich, what's happening, my man? All right, let's get back to it. My starting wide receiver is going to be Nico Collins because he's outside of the wide receiver 24 slot, so I can use him. He's the wide receiver 27. And I even put on here that I don't even care what his matchup is this week, and I don't care that it is Tennessee and that it's a difficult matchup. I think they're second against wide receivers. Nico is going to be matchup proof moving forward. So thank you for coming back and being healthy, Nico. DK Metcalf, wide receiver 23 overall right now, is my sit. And again, that's just a tough one with all the bye weeks to try to choose the right one. But Mark already chose the only one that I thought actually made sense. So if I try to look at the other guys and if they have one that they've already picked, I try not to pick them. So Mark's sit is actually the one I'd probably choose. But if I had to choose another one, I'm just throwing in Metcalf right now because there are some games where he tends to just kind of fade out, and it's like he's not even there. He'll get like 4 or 5 fantasy points. And not that the Cardinals secondary is, a lights out defense, but it is going to be a tough divisional game. So with the slim options, I'm just going to sit him this week. And when I say sit, probably more like just flex because it is still DK Metcalf. I'm going to be starting Will Dissly this week as my starting tight end outside the top 12. And again, just as I was talking about earlier, he's been a large piece of the target share for the Chargers since they've allowed Herbert to open it up and throw the ball more since their Week 5 bye. This week, he gets a very favorable matchup for tight ends against the Ravens. And my bench for this week is Tucker Kraft, tight end 11. He'll be touchdown dependent, in my opinion, this week against the 49ers. If he doesn't get you that touchdown, I don't think he's going to get you a whole lot of fantasy points. So he's going to be my bench for this week. So, Mark, what do you have, my man?
All right. So what I have is my starter. I'm going with Justin Herbert this week. He's quarterback 16. He's been absolutely scorching hot as of late, and his matchups just keep getting better. Baltimore's secondary is where you want to beat them. Most teams don't have much success running the ball against them, so I don't think that's what the Chargers are going to do. So Herbert should be slinging the rock. The quarterback I'm sitting is Sam Darnold, quarterback number 10. I mean, we were mentioning this earlier. He's obviously not a bad play, but with all the buys, you're probably not benching him if you have him. But compared to the other top 12 that were remaining, I just think he's been one of the more least consistent guys there. And the other factor I played in was I don't think they're going to have to put up a lot of points to beat Chicago. So probably not a great fantasy day.
Hey, real quick, I'll let you take a quick breather. Rich did chime in. He agrees with us in that he doesn't think that Hubbard's value really decreases, but then he decides that he wants to throw in to think about them as Montgomery and Gibbs. I hope he means like Montgomery Gibbs Light, like a great value brand, Montgomery Gibbs. Because I'm certainly not looking at Herbert and Brooks in that same light. But and then Steven, just so you know, Rich is actually one of the guys on our team. He's a go-getter, and he's in our Discord chat as well. I know I mentioned the Discord chat earlier, but that was and I had mentioned it on the back end of the patreon.com/toylesstitles. But we do have plenty of free channels in the Discord as well. You don't have to be a Patreon member. So reach out to us at toylesttitles or at JustinFF_, and we can get you an invite to our Discord chat as well. So you can ask Richie's questions. You can ask all the guys on the team. We've got a dozen guys on the team that are all in that Discord all the time. Rich says they can bring him in slowly as they have nothing to play for. They have Hubbard. They gave Hubbard a contract extension. They ain't going away from him. Yep. Yeah. So we mentioned all that earlier as well, Rich. Yep. Absolutely.
The only thing I'll say about that is that can go the other way too. I mean, like I said, Hubbard's not going anywhere, but they have nothing to play for. So they do want to see what they have in Brooks. And they did give Hubbard an extension. So they're going to want to lessen his load a little bit through the rest of the season, keep him fresh, not get injured down the line in a season that means nothing to them.
Yep. Yeah, it definitely could go the other way. Yeah. All right. Sorry to interrupt you.
Oh, you're good. So the running back I'm starting is Brian Robinson. He's running back 28. I expect Washington to be able to run all over Dallas. And they're going to try to take a little off of Jaden Daniels' plate, like we talked about a little bit. I don't think he's fully healthy since he came back from that rib injury. So I think if they can lighten his load a little bit and lean on Brian Robinson against a crappy Dallas rushing defense, I think they're going to do it. Yeah. And we were just talking about this. My sit is Chuba Hubbard this week. He's running back 12. It looks like Jonathan Brooks is finally going to make his debut this week. And like I mentioned, I don't think Hubbard's going anywhere. He's not going to disappear. But when you factor in both of them getting work and how stingy the Chiefs' rush defense is, it's enough to scare me away. Wide receivers, I'm starting A.J. Brown, wide receiver 30. I've mentioned earlier, we're going to beat the Eagles, but doesn't mean we're not going to give up points. Our secondary will give up plenty of air yard to A.J. Brown, so fire him up. The wide receiver I'm sitting is Malik Neighbors. He's wide receiver 13. I mean, the only thing I'm going to say is he's got Danny DeVito throwing it. Not much else to say there. Tight end, I'm starting Dallas Goedert. He's tight end 22. We are the 8th worst in fantasy points per game to the tight end position. Now, last week we did hold Hunter Henry to lower than what he's been used to, but I think a bigger tight end like Goddard, the tight ends typically get that one play up the middle where it's like for 40 yards out of nowhere. I fully expect to see that. The tight end I'm sitting is Mark Andrews, tight end number 10. Greg Roman is now with the Chargers, and I bet you he has some valuable tips on what that looks like and how to stop that tight end position. So I'm benching him this week.
All right. I like that logic. I did neglect to mention the one other piece of other news at the top of the show. I must have overlooked it, but because I also had a comment about Danny DeVito there, except I actually called him Tommy DeVito, but I like yours better. And that was that Daniel Jones has been benched, and Tommy DeVito is set to lose the starting job next to Drew Lock. So so we've got that in the recent news as well that I should have mentioned at the top of the show. But
do we know if Tommy still has that same agent?
You mean his cousin Vinny?
Yeah. Vinny, the guy who made him look like a complete asshole with the pizza shop.
Yeah. Yep. I have no idea. I hope not. I hope he got smart. That had to have been like a family member, though. Let's see. Our hot waiver ad. So for me, I'm going with the waiver ad that I added to the waiver doc. The waiver doc and the waiver wire episode is just for our Patreons at the $5 level or above. But in this particular week, I did add Will Dissly as my waiver wire pickup of the Chargers. He's a tight end that's only rostered in 13.9% of leagues. His usage can no longer be ignored. And he's averaging more than 6 targets per game since the week 5 bye week. He plays Baltimore in week 12, who is the 7th worst team in the league against tight ends. Moving forward, especially with this bipocalypse this week, and we have another one in week 14 that has some pretty heavy hitting bye weeks, like the Ravens and the Chiefs, like a lot of fantasy players involved there. You're going to want tight ends like this where you can pick them up and start them for a few weeks here down the stretch. I think that Will Dissly is good for that. I think that Nate's here is an old one from last week, so I'm just going to delete that. Mark, you can go ahead and go with yours, sir.
Okay, so the waiver wire ad I am doing this week is Elijah Moore. The last 3 weeks, he has had 12, 9, and 8 targets. Can't ask for much more from a wide receiver that you can currently get in 80% of your leagues right now.
Yeah, and the waiver wire ad is one of those guys that we think we can pick up and keep for a few weeks or the rest of the season. So I like that one. I really do. Now, the next one is the streamers, though. So the streamers are more just for this week. Luckily, I was able to get a guy that, or write in a guy here that we can get him just for this week and use him for just this week, potentially. But then also, if his increase in workload continues to go up this week, we might even consider keeping him. But if it doesn't, then we can cut him because we got him for this week alone. But again, I'm going to give Jason the credit for the actual write-up on this one because he does the running backs. But this is a guy I've already put in for Fab for in a lot of my leagues to try to get in tonight's waiver runs across most of my leagues, and that's Roschon Johnson of the Bears, running back that's only rostered in 14% of leagues. It has been a tough season. This is Jason's write-up, so bear with me while I read it. But it has been a tough season for 0 RB drafters this year. All the top running backs are staying healthy, knock on wood, which means RB free agents have been slim pickings. This week is no exception. Normally, I wouldn't suggest Roschon Johnson considering their upcoming schedule of the Vikings, the Lions, the 49ers, the Vikings, and the Lions. But if you are desperate this week for someone getting some playing time, Roschon Johnson saw 11 touches and double-digit fantasy points in his first game with new offensive coordinator in Chicago. And that new offensive coordinator that he's talking about, of course, like I mentioned at the top of the show, is Joe Thomas. So I feel that, like I said, I feel pretty strongly that Roschon Johnson's going to get more and more run. And I think that, again, I agree with Jason that for this week, if you're desperate with all the running backs that are on bye, it's a guy you can pick up, see what happens, and go from there. So now I skipped Nate again. I think that was also from last week. So you have an interesting one here for your streamer.
Yeah. So mine's exactly what this weekly stream is meant for. It's the 1 week stream. I have Luke Schoonmaker, tight end for Dallas. McCarthy acknowledged, I mentioned earlier, that Ferguson's going to be hard pressed to make it in time to be able to play this week since he just got the concussion last night. So they also announced that they're sticking with Cooper Rush this week at quarterback. And as long as he's out there, he's going to have to rely on the quick dump off routes, and he's going to utilize that tight end position quite a bit.
I like it. And correction, I meant to say Thomas Brown. I said Joe Thomas because I was also looking up at our recent news where Joe Douglas had been fired, but I meant offensive coordinator Thomas Brown. Joe Thomas, of course, is a Hall of Fame offensive tackle for the Browns. Yeah, now, one and done, the eliminator game. This is a game that we play where we choose one quarterback, one running back, one wide receiver, and one tight end that we think is going to do well this week. But once you choose a guy, you cannot select him again for the rest of the season. You get fantasy points, PPR points, just like any other league. Only, like I said, you can only get them once all season. So I am no longer in first. So I'm not going first because I've been doing these in order of where we're at. So Nate took the lead from me this week because Nate had a really good week this week. And you and I both had a couple of spots where we faltered a bit, but he had Pat Mahomes at 25.84 this past week. Brees Hall got him 24.1. Amon-Ra got him 27.7. And then the only spot that he was weak was tight end Kyle Pitts at 0.9. So at three of his positions, he got mid to high 20s. So that's why he was able to take the lead this week. And he now has 760.98. And he obviously hates the Indianapolis Colts because he went with Jared Goff and Jahmyr Gibbs this week going up against the Colts. So he's going with a stack that's not even a quarterback wide receiver stack or a quarterback tight end stack. He just thinks that Jahmyr Gibbs is going to get a lot of touchdowns, and then also Jared Goff is going to get a lot of touchdowns. And to his credit, I also think that he's right. Then he went with Justin Jefferson. He's playing at Chicago against the Bears, and then Jonnu Smith at home against the Patriots. Let's see. For me, I'm in second place now at 745.96. Last week, Russell Wilson did exactly what Russell Wilson has been doing for several years to all of my fantasy leagues, and that is just upsetting me. He only got me 8.3 against a very weak Ravens secondary, so that was interesting. Joe Mixon did try to help me out quite a bit. He had that 3-touchdown game, 33.3. I still think that that Mark cheated me a few points on that one, so I'm gonna have to go back and double check, make sure, because I feel like he had like about 112 fantasy points this week.
Yeah, I think maybe Sleeper stopped counting after the third touchdown.
Right, Sleeper fell asleep. George Pickens only got me 8.9, so, and I can't be upset because like that's what George Pickens does. Like it's my own fault. And then Hunter Henry only got me 6.3. So I went pretty weak on three positions this past week. So it really kind of bit me. Luckily, Joe Mixon saved some face for me. But this week I'm looking to bounce back. I've got Justin Herbert. I think Justin Herbert gets it going against that Baltimore secondary. I'm going to try to trust the quarterback going against the Baltimore secondary 2 weeks in a row. But this week, Justin Herbert's going to get it done. We've seen the way that they've been throwing the ball there. I like it. I love it, and I want some more of it. And then I've got Kareem Hunt at Carolina. I just talked earlier about how Carolina is bad against running backs. They're bad against tight ends. They're bad against every position, like quarterback. So I'm also going with the stack that's not a quarterback wide receiver stack. I'm going with the running back tight end stack with Kareem Hunt and Travis Kelce at Carolina. Who knows? Maybe Hunt will throw a touchdown pass to Kelce. But
I was just going to say that. I was like, it's not on the realm of possibility for the Chiefs to draw that up.
If that happens, I'm giving away 2 free Frankenstein spots on the show next week. No, those free spots are only potentially to anybody that are new to us this week on Blue Sky at Toyless Titles on Blue Sky. Then I'm going with Amon-Ra St. Brown at I put at Detroit there. He's not at Detroit; they're at Indianapolis. So we have 3 different Lions players now that we've chosen to going against my Indianapolis Colts. So what say you, Mark? You going to add a 4th?
No, I'm not. But I mean, that doesn't mean it's not a good choice because from last week, I did nothing. Well, I had Justin Herbert, had a great game, 30.38 points.
Yeah, really great.
Jonathan Taylor, woof. 6 points. Tyreek Hill, 12 points. Okay, not great. Not what you're looking for. Njoku, 10 points. Not that great. Yeah, I nosedived very quickly into last place. So I'm switching it up this week. I'm gonna try to say who I'm starting at quarterback here. I might vomit when I go to do it, but I'm starting Bo Nix. And
Bo.
earmuffs Rich. The only reason I'm doing is because it's against the Raiders. So that's why I'm starting Bo Nix. Running back, I'm going with Kenneth Walker against the Cardinals. Yeah, I think if Seattle's going to win, they're going to have a good run game, and I want them to win. So I'm going with what I want this week, followed by my receiver, Puka Nakua against the
There you
Eagles.
go. There you go. I like it.
Yeah, he's going to have a monster game. And then I intentionally, stupidly saved Cade Otton until Mike Evans got back, but we're still going to plug him in anyways. He's my tight end.
I still have Puka left, by the way. Nate has selected Cooper Kupp and Puka already. You still have Cooper Kupp left. I've chosen Cooper Kupp, but I still have Puka left. So I've been kind of saving that one for a rainy day. So
there we go.
Let's see. TD parlay. I've come up with a new strategy, Mark.
Yeah.
This is my new strategy for the TD parlay because I am wrong every single week. This is well documented. I'm not good with betting these prop bets like this. So I've decided that since every single player I've chosen has not scored a touchdown, I'm going to start choosing players that are going against the Colts to help increase their odds. So I'm going with David Montgomery. Now, the reason I chose David Montgomery over the other options there in Detroit is because most of the other options are guys that I have on my fantasy teams, and I want them to score touchdowns. David Montgomery, I think, is the only one that I only have like 1 or 2 shares of, so I could probably afford to have one bad week with the guy that's been tearing it up for me. So I'm going with David Montgomery against the Colts as my TD parlay. And now because of my reasoning, I'm sure he's probably actually going to score a touchdown. But Nate, I think Nate might be switching and doing the same thing here because he is going with Christian McCaffrey, who's going against his Packers this week. And he's also always wrong with these things. So maybe we had the same strategy here. I don't know, but who is your TD? Your guaranteed TD getter this week?
So I am actually guaranteeing this one. I guaranteed it last week with Montgomery against Jacksonville. That was very easy. And I'm guaranteeing this one as well. Brian Robinson versus Dallas. The only way he doesn't score is if he gets hurt. The only way.
Yeah, we don't want to see that.
No.
Like, subscribe, give us that thumbs up. Make sure you hit that bell for us so that you get the notifications when we go live. Yeah, unless you've got anything else to add, Mark, I think that's a wrap for our Week 12 preview.
Good.
Let's see. I feel like I have something I have to do soon. Thursday night, I've got something I've got to do. I'm trying to think of a time that we can do a Frankenstank episode this week.
Oh, I did want to mention that. That's the one thing I'm missing this year. The fantasy just doesn't feel right this year because my Frank team is an absolute disaster. And it's just not fun not having that weekly Frank to look forward to each week because I mean I'm still setting lineups and doing all that, but I mean my team's so far gone. It's like it's not even fun right now. And I miss it. I miss every week.
Yeah, so I've got it pulled up here. I want you to take a look at this. There's my roster. So, not between last week and the week before that, I lost Dak to injury. I lost another big quarterback to the Frank loss I had. He was stolen from me. So I'm kind of hurting there. I do have Tua, Bo Nix, who's been doing really well, and Baker Mayfield, who is hopefully getting Mike Evans back really soon. So hopefully there's still some fire left there. But between those three, I got to play the matchups the rest of the season because I've already stolen 2 quarterbacks. Because for those of you that don't know, if you win, you get to steal a player. I stole Devon Achane this week, and I don't even think I'm going to be able to play him this week. He has a sweet matchup too against the Patriots. But I got James Conner with the sweet matchup against Seattle. I've got Jahmyr Gibbs with the sweet matchup against Indy. I've got Kenneth Walker with the sweet matchup against Arizona. And then I can't bench Derrick Henry. And even if I did because of the matchup, I still want to start him because he plays Monday night. So that gives you that opportunity to, make a swap on Monday night to throw in a weaker player for a steal potential. Like, look at those running backs, man. I'm half tempted to bench Tua to start all 5 of them.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, but now where I'm really hurting right here is at wide receiver, though. Luckily, CD had a decent game. I need the wide receiver is the only position left that I can steal. I haven't stolen a wide receiver all year because I've never faced one where I thought that it was a good steal compared to other options. My next 2 opponents both have decent wide receivers, so if I can win, I'll be able to steal there. But so that means I got to figure out a way to get Xavier Legette into the lineup, but he plays at 1:00. So if I did anything, I don't know. Anyway, that's just an idea. It's just a little bit of Frank talk. Just wanted to get a little bit of Frank talk in there.
Yeah.
Let people see a little bit of what it's like, but we'll try to get a complete yeah, Rich, he got lucky that Barkley wasn't stolen from me or from him, but my son Peyton stole Barkley from Shane Hallam this week, so that was I'm kind of surprised I didn't get a message from Shane on that one. Barkley has been stolen like 4 or 5 times in our division.
Nice.
But yeah, so yeah, I'll try to get in a Frank episode at some point this week, maybe Saturday or something. But anyway, that's probably enough here. We appreciate you guys tuning in, and we'll catch you next week.
With a million podcasts out there, we're grateful you chose shortlisted titles. We give fantasy football advice to get your crap team to the finals. From Nate's cousin Eddie Persona, his unapologetic love for Chubb, and Justin's hatred for Chris Ballard.